following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the February 22nd meeting of the Cary Town Council, and at this time I'll recognize Mayor Pro Tem Bush for our ceremonial opening.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is to adopt the agenda. I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Your pick. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's unanimous. That takes us to recognitions, reports, and presentations. We do have a special group in our audience this evening. PAC 200 is working on their Building a Better World merit badge, and if you would stand at this time and be recognized. Thank you for being here. At this time, I'll turn it over to our attorney, Chris Simpson, for a report on the Long Beverage settlement.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just here to report that a self-reported violation of the town's ordinances relating to preservation of open space was reported by Long Beverage, and we've reached a settlement in that matter that resulted in Long Beverage replanting part of their own property and then planting on some town property. And if anyone is interested in a copy of that settlement, there's a link on the web, or it's available through the town attorney's office.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. This time, I'll turn it over to the town manager for his update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we have some amazing news to share. Cary has been selected as one of 35 champion cities as a part of the Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge. The town will receive $100,000 to begin a 6-month testing phase to flesh out our idea. Cary is trying to tackle the opioid crisis that is affecting so many communities across our country by aggregating opioid consumption data, by measuring concentrations of opioid metabolites in sewage. The goal for Cary is to be able to use the data in aggregate to better inform public health officials and educators so that effective programs can be applied to those at risk. On a different note, we wanted to let our citizens know that beginning tomorrow evening until early Saturday morning, we will be replacing a water valve in the intersection of Cary Parkway and High House Road. This is being done in advance of the intersection improvement project starting in early spring. Detours will be posted and citizens can get traffic updates on the Waze app.
A preview of things to come, I'm afraid.
Yes.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Mayor.
We now move to our next item on the agenda. It is Public Speaks Out. We've included instructions for speaking at Public Speaks Out on the printed agenda. And if you'd like to speak, I'd ask that you take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out have 3 minutes for their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic unless it's a public hearing, and that works to your benefit because you have more time to speak at a public hearing. And there are several public hearings on our agenda this evening. 3-minute time limit will be enforced, not to be rude, but to be fair to all of our speakers. There's a timer on the podium. It starts off with a green light. When the green light turns into a yellow light, that means you have 30 seconds remaining. And when the yellow light turns into a flashing red light, that's when I'm going to interrupt you and ask you to immediately conclude your comments. To have an efficient public speaks out meeting or session, we ask that groups have a spokesperson to speak on behalf of large groups to reduce repetitive comments. And also, if you're the next in line to speak, I would ask that you stand over there by the stairs to be ready to come down to the clerk and turn in your card as soon as the previous speaker has finished. It also signals that there are additional speakers at Public Speaks Out. I thank everyone in our audience for understanding and respecting that this is a business meeting. Please do not applaud, make remarks from your seats, or anything else that may distract from the meeting. Now's the time for Public Speaks Out, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at Public Speaks Out? Seeing no one, we'll close Public Speaks Out, and we'll move right into the consent agenda. This is item 4 on your agenda. For the benefit of people watching our meeting on TV, I'm going to take a moment to review our consent agenda items. One vote approves all of these items. On the consent agenda, we have minutes. 17A14 Atlantic Avenue Tire Land Company LLC annexation, adopt a resolution scheduling a public hearing. 17 REZ 28 Wilson Road rezoning. 17 REZ 24 Airport Boulevard rezoning. Garment Operations Center Improvements Phase 2 Construction Bid Award. Ratification of resolution Channing Park, Shelburne Senior Living, Starbucks at Mill Pond Village. Consideration of approval of condemnation resolutions for the proposed sidewalk on North Harrison Avenue. Condemnation resolutions to secure necessary easements for the Terrace 2 Pump Station Elimination Project. Northwest Cary Parkway Bridge Rehabilitation Project. This time I'll ask my council members if they have any of these items they would like to pull for discussion. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. We now move to public hearings. Same rules apply for public hearings that applied for Public Speaks Out with one exception. Instead of 3 minutes, you now have 5 minutes for your comments. Our first public hearing is 17A10 Life International Life Community Church of Research Triangle Park annexation. Wayne Nicholas of our planning department will introduce the hearing. The applicant has requested that council defer this action until a future meeting. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. Good evening, council. This first request is for annexation of a 1.34 acre portion of the property located at 11427 Green Level Church Road, approximately 1,600 feet southwest of the intersection with Kit Creek Road. Property is located within Cary's ETJ and it's zoned residential 40. It's also contiguous to the corporate limits. The request is associated with a development plan for the construction of the Alston Ridge Middle School. The petitioner has requested only a portion of the property be annexed, which is allowed under the statutes that govern annexation. The area proposed for annexation is part of a new road that will serve the school. As you can see here on this slide, the areas in yellow are the areas that are already annexed. A portion of the road that hasn't been annexed is outlined in red. So essentially this annexation is just to bring the last part of the school development into the town limits. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Now it's time for the public hearing for 17A10 Life International Life Community Church Research Triangle Park annexation. And I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Open it up to council members for questions or comments. If not, we will see this at a future meeting. We'll now move to our second public hearing, 17A11, Macedonia United Methodist Church of Cary annexation. Once again, Mr. Nicholas will introduce the hearing and council will act on this item tonight. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. The second request is for annexation of 1.67 acres of unaddressed property on Tryon Road, located in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Tryon Road and Walnut Street. The annexation will also include 1.69 acres of adjacent right-of-way. Property is located within Cary's ETJ and it's contiguous to the corporate limits. You may recall this property was before the council previously last year as part of an MXD rezoning that included a preliminary development plan for a restaurant with a drive-through facility. Since approval of the rezoning last year, the construction plans were submitted for review by staff, and now the property must be annexed before the site plan can be approved. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Now's the time for the public hearing for 17A11 Macedonia United Methodist Church of Cary annexation, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions, comments, or a motion.
Make a motion to approve annexation 17A11.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Takes us to our third public hearing. It is 17A12 JMRS 1 LLC annexation. Mr. Nicholas will introduce the item. Council will act on this item tonight. Mr. Nicholas.
This request is for annexation of two properties totaling 7.7 acres. Properties are located at 2428 and 2436 Carpenter Upchurch Road, which are adjacent to the southern boundary of the Green Hope High School property. Properties are located within Cary's ETJ and are contiguous to the corporate limits. They're zoned transitional residential conditional use. The request is associated with a development plan that proposes a subdivision of 40 townhomes. Similar to the last item, development plan that's currently under review cannot be approved until the annexation has been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Now's the time for the public hearing for 17812 JMRS 1 LLC annexation, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions, comments, or a motion.
Make a motion that we approve annexation petition 17A12.
There's a
Second.
motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. We now move to the fourth public hearing, 17A13 Camel Investment of North Carolina annexation. Mr. Nicholas will introduce the hearing. Council will defer the action on this annexation to a future meeting. Mr. Nicholas.
This final request is for annexation of 2.12 acres located at 2500 Campbell Road in the southeast quadrant of the Tryon Road, Campbell Road intersection. Annexation will also include 1.24 acres of adjacent right-of-way. Although the property is contiguous to the corporate limits, it's located outside Cary's ETJ and it's in Wake County's jurisdiction. It's currently zoned Wake County Residential 40 watershed. Since the property is not in Cary's ETJ and does not have Cary zoning, and the applicant does wish to develop under Cary's regulations, it's necessary to bring the property into the Cary town limits. In doing that, at the same time, we also have to designate a Cary zoning district as well. So in conjunction with the annexation, the applicants also requested a rezoning to establish initial Cary zoning for the property. Public hearing for the rezoning has not yet occurred. It's anticipated to be conducted within the next couple of months. The proposed zoning would allow a mini storage use on the property. That concludes the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Now's time for public hearing on 17A13 Camel Investment of North Carolina annexation. I would invite our first speaker forward. Seeing no one, we'll close this public hearing. Invite council members to offer comments or ask questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments I'd like to mention. I think it's good that the applicant is asking to become part of Cary and to be part of our standards. At the same time, it is I'm not sure why, I didn't know it was being continued, so I can defer those comments to later. But at the same time, I think it's important that as we come up with more and more of these uses where the storage centers are becoming part of communities, it's really important that we have a high standard, very high standard. This is the entrance into town, and we worked hard with that applicant to make sure that the development just south of there was of a much higher standard so that we could be good neighbors with them living there. And I just hope that as this comes forward, I want the staff to have a lot of scrutiny on this, and I want to make sure that this kind of meets our intent as an entrance into Cary. So I just wanted to, make those comments known before it comes back.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else? Okay, this will come to us at a future meeting. We now move to our fifth public hearing. It is North Harrison Hotel, 16 REZ 15. Ms. Grannon of our planning department will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this rezoning tonight, but it will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation. The item will return to council at a future meeting. Ms. Granite.
Thank you. Good evening, council. For your consideration is a request to rezone approximately 7.2 acres located at North Harrison Avenue. And this is not a typo. It is a case with 16. So it's been around for a while. We've been looking at this for many, many months. The property is located just south of the Arboretum Shopping Center, and it's located to the east of the Wessex subdivision. There's vacant property to the south, and then the Beech Tree subdivision below that. Zoomed in aerial view shows the subject property is currently vacant, and it is zoned residential 40. It has never had a development on it. The applicant is proposing mixed-use district, and when they first submitted this to the town almost 2 years ago, they showed 3 hotels with a total of 350 rooms, a maximum of 8 stories. They proposed removal of champion trees. There were some questions about access from the site to the Arboretum Shopping Center. And there was understandably a lot of confusion and concern from the community. First of all, we scheduled a neighborhood meeting that was right after the 4th of July. So even though it was attended by about 50 people, we heard a lot of feedback from citizens that this was too close to a holiday. So we've since taken a much carefuler look at our schedules, and if it's a holiday week, we don't hold the neighborhood meetings right after a major holiday like that. So we actually held 2 neighborhood meetings for this case, and both meetings were very well attended, and they were filled with citizens with lots of concerns and questions. They were concerned about traffic impacts, site access. The building height was a major concern. They wanted more information from the staff about stormwater management, buffer standards, whether or not there were opportunities for green development. And then several citizens asked the question, is this use necessary? Do we need this many hotel rooms on this site? Are they asking for more than what they really need? Well, the applicant had been considering a development of this size because they had submitted a traffic study and paid for a traffic study for all 3 hotels. But they went back to the drawing board and proposed a new development plan that reduced the number of hotels by 1 down to 2 hotels and reduced the room count to 252 rooms. They staggered the building heights. What they're proposing now is between 3 to 7 stories for Hotel 2 and proposing a maximum of 7 stories for Hotel 1. And the champion trees that had previously been proposed for removal are now protected. So we've got 2 hotels proposed, Hotel 1 with 138 rooms and a 7-story height, a little under 79,000 square feet, and then Hotel 2 with 114 rooms and shared amenity features. So the 2 hotels would be under the same parent company and share fitness center, swimming pool, meeting space, things of that nature. And that hotel would be a larger facility with 96,810 square feet. Just a couple aspects of the preliminary development plan that I'd like to point out. The applicant has proposed a type A buffer, which is our highest standard for the buffer, between the subject property and the Wessex neighborhood to the west. There is one portion of the buffer area where it drops down below the 80 feet at its lowest point, 43.5 feet. And the reason for this is there is an adjacent property owner that has a fence that encroaches onto the property. So the applicant's been working with that adjacent property owner so that they don't have to remove that fence. And hence then the buffer reduction needs to be presented to you so you can consider it as a modification. The height, again, dropped down to a maximum of 7 stories, preservation of champion trees. They are requesting an 8% parking reduction, and they're asking for some reduced spacing between road access points on the site. The subject property is located within a commercial mixed-use center, and this use is an appropriate use according to the Imagine Cary Community Plan. We've done a preliminary analysis, and these policies are listed in your staff report. In evaluating the request, staff is looking at whether or not this proposal is meeting the work policies. Is it offering a more diverse economic opportunity for the community, more employment options? are the traffic mitigations that have been offered suitable to ensure safety. And we're looking at the proximity of the site to the adjacent residential and commercial developments, the buffers and the setbacks. Stream buffers are located on the site according to Cary's most recent GIS maps, and field determination of those features will be required at the time of development plan review. We've also alerted the applicant and their engineer to concerns from a number of citizens about stormwater management and protection of their adjacent property. So the applicant has been in contact with a number of adjacent property owners. This shows the location of a future greenway trail south of Montebello Drive in close proximity to the site. And the subject property does have frontage on North Harrison Avenue, but there is a very limited frontage opportunity for a streetscape. So we're not going to see much of a streetscape associated with this property. They've basically got enough room for an entrance road in and out of the site because of the shape of the parcel. There is a transit route. There is a Go Cary transit route which operates along North Harrison Avenue. This shows you the location of the property owners who received written notification of the public hearing. And then we've had community feedback since these letters went out and the property was posted. Citizen concern was primarily for traffic impacts, ingress and egress to and from the site. And then a number of citizens wanted to know, since it's been so long since those neighborhood meetings, what are their opportunities for public input and engagement? So I've talked to a number of citizens to let them know that they couldn't ask questions of the council tonight, but they could state what their concerns were, and then they know how to reach the applicant and staff if they do want to engage in some more dialogue. So we've made sure that they understand how the public hearing process works. Traffic mitigations have been proposed by the applicant at the site entrance, and then there is also a proposal where the applicant has worked with the town engineers and with NCDOT to construct a bulb out on North Harrison Avenue opposite Montebello Drive, which would help to facilitate safer U-turn movement on that street. This shows you the location of the sign, public hearing sign that was posted on the subject property. So this concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is present, and then following the public hearing, both the applicant and the staff will be available for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. At this time, I would invite the applicant forward for their remarks.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Glenda Top with Glenda S. Top and Associates, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the property owner, Mr. Joel Williams, and the potential developer of the property, Daily 7. Staff has done a very thorough job explaining the specifics of the proposed rezoning. What I want to do tonight is supplement staff's presentation with providing council and the audience and citizens of Cary a background of what Daily 7 has been doing, as Deborah pointed out, since we first began this process back in 2016. We believe that you will see that Daily 7 is a family business that strives to be good neighbors and stewards of the community, and that they are committed to creating a product that the community needs and can be proud of. As staff indicated, what is being considered tonight is a rezoning to MXD. It is for 2 hotels for a total of 252 rooms. After a lengthy and detailed due diligence period, Daily 7 met with the Town of Cary staff in February of 2016 to discuss the proposed rezoning of the Williams property for a hotel site. Pursuant to that meeting, Daily 7 determined that this site is viable for a hotel complex, and there is a significant need for the use in this community and in North Cary. Given the use proposed, a traffic report was required. As pointed out, the original traffic study and rezoning was for a blended hotel project with 3 hotels and a total of 350 rooms. I do want to point out that when we started this process, it was prior to the Cary Community Plan being adopted, so it was under the old comprehensive plan. And under the old comprehensive plan, this was located in a regional activity center. So from the regional activity center, the designation today is a destination center. The required zoning back in 2016 and today under the Cary Community Plan is the same, but again, we did start under the old plan. It is important to also note that through this process, we worked very hard to come up with a preliminary development plan that, at least initially, we thought was appropriate. We did submit a revised plan back in June of 2016 prior to the neighborhood meeting. As staff pointed out, there were 2 neighborhood meetings that were held in July of 2016. And at these meetings, we did get good feedback as to issues and concerns of the adjoining property owners. There were basically 4 primary concerns that were raised: traffic impact, buffers in transition, height and density adjacent to the residential homes, and stormwater runoff. In order to address the traffic concerns raised at the neighborhood meeting, Daily 7 and their design team met with adjacent property owners, Town of Cary staff, and NCDOT. They also hired Kimley Horn to help analyze the TAR and assist in determining the most feasible and beneficial transportation improvements to offer with the PDP. Again, in having these meetings, we did meet with individuals from Reedy Creek Partners, Cary Academy, and the Wessex and Beech Tree subdivisions to address concerns about buffers, transitions, height, and density. Daily 7 met extensively with the adjacent property owners in the Wessex subdivision directly abutting the property in the rear. Daily 7 also met with owners of the Arboretum apartments during the process. Based on these meetings, Daily 7 eliminated the 3rd hotel and reduced the room count from 350 to 255, which represents nearly a 30% reduction in the density of the project. In addition, Daily 7 met with neighbors directly adjacent to the property, noting that they would be the most impacted by the project. I'm happy to report that Daily 7 has reached agreements with the property owners directly adjacent to the project, allowing them to have input on the PDD regarding height, setbacks, buffers, lighting, and landscaping as it relates to their property. The end result is a project that we can support collectively. A letter of support was sent to the town from Beech Tree, and it's also our understanding that there will be someone from Beech Tree speaking in favor of the project tonight, and also someone who will be speaking in favor representing the Arboretum HOA. Once the neighbors' feedback was incorporated into the PDP and the density was reduced, we submitted a revised PDP in June of 2017. The reduction in density, because of what we were now proposing, required that there be another traffic analysis report. The applicant paid for that, and we received the results in October of 2017. And based on those recommendations, we did submit another revised plan development a preliminary development plan that showed the traffic improvements. As a result of the meetings, and based on the comments that we heard from adjoining property owners, including Cary Academy, it was agreed to place a bulb out for passenger vehicle U-turn movements just north of Montebello Drive. This was not the original location that was recommended in the TAR for the bulb out, which was originally recommended for Research Drive. As many of you know, Research Drive serves as a major access point for Cary Academy. After meeting with school administrators, Town of Cary staff, and NCDOT, it was the consensus that a bulb out at Research Drive may solve traffic counts, but would likely create significant safety concern with students exiting the school. Thus, the PDP you see tonight has the bulb out proposed at Montebello Drive, which we have agreed with staff and NCDOT is a much more safe and logical location. Want to next address stormwater runoff. With regards to the stormwater runoff voiced at the neighborhood meeting, in February of 2017, the Daily 7 development team met with members of the Beech Tree HOA, North Carolina State University Research Institute, North Carolina State University BAE Stormwater Group, and the Black Creek Watershed Association regarding stormwater runoff and erosion issues currently experienced downstream of the subject property. Led by the Black Creek Watershed Association. The purpose of the meeting was to explore opportunities to implement low-impact development practices on the proposed site. The result of the meeting was a public-private partnership to assemble a team that would help design, construct, and monitor the stormwater runoff far beyond the requirements of the town ordinance. We are partnering to improve and protect our valuable resources downstream in the Black Creek watershed, and more specifically in the Beech Tree and Wessex subdivisions. I'm happy to report that in September of '27, a federal EPA 3119 grant was awarded to implement and study low-impact development practices on the hotel site. The grant will provide research opportunities for modeling low-impact development implementation on commercial sites throughout North Carolina. As you can see, it has taken quite a while for us to get to this public hearing. We believe the extra time has been well spent. The plan you see tonight reflects the monumental effort Daily 7 has made to address the concerns that they have heard throughout the process. The revisions to the PDP reflect size and scale of a proposed project, appropriate transitions to adjacent properties, which include height setbacks, buffers, and we have addressed traffic, which all were concerns raised by residents at the neighborhood meetings and since we held those meetings. The changes to the PDP as a result of all the efforts I have already mentioned include, but are not limited to, the removal of the third hotel, which reduced the number of room counts, reduction in height. We are now preserving the two champion trees. Again, we are reducing the height. We have lowered the height adjacent to the existing residential development, and the height increases as it moves north toward the apartments and Arboretum Shopping Center. It's also important to note that due to the elevations of the site, that the 7-story hotel portion will be similar in height to the existing Arboretum apartments. We've increased the landscape screening along the rear parking lot. There is a minimum 100-foot building setback along the western property line, which is adjacent to the residential area. With the removal of the third hotel, we removed the parking deck. We've asked for a reduction in parking spaces. Again, we do believe that the relocation of the bulb out is important given the concerns that we heard, particularly from Cary Academy. There was concern about the dumpster location. We relocated that. We worked on cross-access locations, and again, just want to point out the monumental effort that went into Daily 7 and the whole group working on getting that EPA grant and working on what has been a long-standing problem with stormwater in that area. Before I close, I just want to touch briefly on the policies that the proposed rezoning complies with. As I mentioned, we started under the old comprehensive plan. So as we went through the process, we were asked to identify and look at those policies in the Cary Community Plan that were applicable to our rezoning. So I know that staff mentioned them briefly, but I think it's important to go over them one more time. The two main chapters that are involved are the work chapter and the shape chapter. In the work chapter, there are 3 policies, and they are grow a sustainable and diversifying workforce, enhance locational appeal to businesses and workers, and diversify Cary's economy. The proposed hotels will provide new employment opportunities in Cary and will serve to meet the needs of business travelers. The proposed rezoning will increase the locational appeal to businesses, providing them with more choices for lodging for their visitors as well as for in-training or visiting employees in what has become a burgeoning employment growth center. The subject property is located to an adjacent major business park and will add to the variety of lodging alternatives to support the needs of new and expanding businesses in this part of Cary. The development proposal will significantly expand the hospitality base in Cary, specifically in an area where this use is limited, and provide substantial additional service employment opportunities. In the shape chapter, there are 3 policies. Encourage mixed-use development, support and facilitate redevelopment and infill development, and provide appropriate transitions between land uses. The subject property, again, is adjacent to the Arboretum Shopping Center. There is also multifamily and detached housing adjacent to the property. This rezoning does introduce another use type. The proposed hotel use provides a service that is underrepresented in this area. As far as supporting redevelopment, this is a piece of property that has been vacant for quite a while. It's also at a location where existing services are accessible to the property. And again, talking about the appropriate transition with buffer, we feel that the proposed buffer between the hotel and the adjacent single-family property to the west provides visual screening. The height of the buildings have been reduced, and by doing this, it's reduced the intensity of the development, and we feel that the transition now from the existing residential to the proposed hotel is appropriate and sufficient. And also, just stating again, we do feel that the proposed use is an excellent transition from the commercial development in the Arboretum to the single-family existing residential development. I want to conclude by saying that the proposed rezoning does comply with the vision and policies of the Cary Community Plan. Daily 7 is a company that prides itself in doing the right thing. They are proud of the plan that is before council and the community tonight. They are committed to developing a project that the community can be proud of. I also think it's important for the council and the residents to know that Daily 7, when they develop a project, not only do they develop it, but they stay with it, they manage it, they do not sell their property and their hotels. So they are in a community, they stay in a community, and they are excellent corporate citizens. As you can see, this has taken quite a while to get here tonight. Daily 7 has listened to what they've heard from different citizens throughout the process. However, we do want council to understand and know that we are committed to continuing to work with the residents, and we do realize that there has been time passed since the original 2 neighborhood meetings. We are more than willing to have another neighborhood meeting, inviting everyone as the other neighborhood meetings in the past, as the plan goes through the process prior to the Planning and Zoning Board. And if this is something that is desired, we are also in a position tonight, for those who are here tonight and for those who are listening on TV, to provide a date for that meeting. Would like to thank council for the opportunity to present this case tonight. It's been an honor and a privilege working with the folks with Daily 7. They are truly committed to providing an excellent product for Cary, and feel very strongly that what they have proposed is appropriate for this location and meets the desires of the town of Cary. One last thing, I am here to answer any questions. There are other members of the team that are here to address traffic, more specifically also the design of the development, as there are representatives from Daily 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stock. Now it's time for the public hearing for 16 REZ 15, the North Harrison Hotels, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Daly, and I happen to be a resident of Raleigh. I am the president of Daily 7, Inc., the parent company for this hotel development. Daily 7 was founded over 35 years ago when my 6 siblings and I decided to band together to put our time, effort, and resources together and start a hotel development and management company. We are a true family business, with our children, the next generation, starting to take on some of the more important roles. You will hear from some of them tonight. Over the years, we have developed over 50 hotels, and currently our portfolio has 38 operating hotels under our family ownership and management. We affiliate with the top hotel companies, such as Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and IHG. We have been approved for Marriott brands in this particular Cary location. If I could just take a moment, I would like the audience of those who are in support, if they would please stand. So some folks have come out to support us. Over the last 2 years, we have spent a significant amount of time listening to our neighbors in Wessex, Beechtree, and others around us. We have made major alterations of the project to meet their concerns, including more than doubling the screening area between our hotel development and our Wessex neighbors. More than doubling the screening area. We have partnered with the Beechtree neighborhood and NC State in applying for a federal grant to monitor the runoff of our project, and have been awarded the federal grant. When we decided to pursue a new hotel location, or when we decide to pursue one, we do an extensive amount of research of the market, and we conduct a feasibility study. In this particular instance, we hired out an outside firm to analyze the hotel market and the feasibility of our project. The resulting report supported our research that there was a need for additional hotels at this location. This will be a benefit to Cary, and it will create approximately 75 new jobs for Cary citizens. We take pride in our developments, and we are long-term holders of our hotels. We typically own and operate our hotels for many years. 30-plus years is not uncommon. Our actions over the last 2 years speaks volumes about us. We have proven that we are going to be good neighbors. We have listened to our neighbors' concerns, significantly altering the size and scope of our project, and we have provided additional screening of our neighbors' homes. We are an honest family business trying to do a good hotel development from all perspectives. This is the right project for this site and for Cary. We would appreciate your vote in favor of this rezoning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Next speaker, please.
Makes me a little nervous being the first person to speak after that. My name is Rudy Zalasak. I'm a homeowner in Beechtree, and I'm opposed to the development as it presently stands. My main concern is traffic. The developer has tried to squeeze what they can into a very strange shape, and most of the cars leaving the hotel in the morning are going to be trying to go to the airport, go to their business, get back on the road on I-40, and they'll be trying to get back, they'll be trying to go north during rush hour. Having all those people trying to turn around in a bulb at once or within an hour period while everyone else is trying to go north on Harrison to I-40 to their jobs sounds kind of nightmarish. A lot of people will be turning south. They'll be seeing that they can't turn around at the bulb. They'll be coming into Beechtree. They'll be going down Rock Point. They'll be going on Cary Parkway and trying to turn around there. I think that that connection at Harrison is just not manageable. I don't understand why there's just an entrance on North Harrison, that's reasonable, and an exit through the Arboretum without any right turn on a North Harrison. I also think that the scale of the, I'm sorry, is that too loud? The scale of the project hasn't been reduced very much, but a little bit, but I would think that a better fit for Cary would be something like a loft hotel or a long-term stay hotel. Both of those options would spread the traffic out a little more evenly through the day, especially the long-term option, or possibly even an apartment. I want to add, after the developer's presentation, that I doubt that a very large percentage of the 75 jobs at this location will be Cary residents. I suspect there's going to be a lot of people commuting from across the Triangle area to these jobs. They're not going to be very high-paying jobs. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Stalizik. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and fellow councilmen. My name is Joel Williams. I'm the owner of the property and the applicant. Just a little bit of background about myself. I've lived here in Cary since 1962. So I've seen it go from a few thousand to, I understand, maybe 175,000. So this town has really exploded, during the time frame that I've been here. And since I've owned this property since the mid-'70s, I think 1976, and with the growth that you've seen here, there have been people constantly wanting to buy that property, wanting to develop that property for various things. Well, I worked at the Research Triangle Institute for many years. I started there in 1962 and got there by a dirt road. So this research has been the core of this whole area. And when I heard Mr. Daly speak just a few minutes ago, it really reminded me of how valuable research is, and that why I think that Mr. Daly and his team and his family is doing such a great job of trying to take this 7.5 acres roughly and develop it into what I think is a world-class Marriott-type hotel that would complement a lot of the business activity in the area. I've always supported, like the Umstead Hotel at one time was going adjacent to this site, and then it moved across the road. I've never ever tried to interfere with any development in that area. I've always supported it. And I'm really hoping that the council and the mayor will support this, because what I've tried to do as an individual is try to keep what I call some dirtball type of application of that property coming before you. I've been a rough screen over the years for that. Why, I don't know, but I always work very closely with the developers, the Arboretum. Jeff Allman, one of the former directors of planning here, wanted to have a common interest. I worked closely with him, and Mr. Smith, I think, was, I know I've seen him around. I think he's been around almost as long as I have. But in any event, I can't imagine anyone bending over backwards as much as I've seen the Daily 7 family group do to make this site work. And I would really hope and trust that maybe you would support this activity, because I think it would be a great addition. I think it would really complement the Arboretum, SAS, and that whole area, which I know is, as you say, it's kind of a gateway, one of the main gateways in. And of course, at a gateway, everybody would like to have a place to hang their hat. And I think what Mr. Daly and his family are proposing would be a great asset. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Jason Strickland. I live at 219 Midenhall Way, North Carolina. I'm an attorney that practices in Wake County, and other than a 6-year stint in our firm's New Bern office, I have lived in Wake County since 1994 and lived and paid taxes in Cary since 1998. My property is immediately west of the subject property, and I object to the development and specifically, or more clearly, I object to the rezoning. This is going to be a new use that overburdens the property. It's going to be a negative impact to the property values of myself and my neighbors. I don't believe the roads on North Harrison in that area can accept this type of development, this dense of a development. I have no issue or objection with the owner or the developer developing this property consistent with the existing zoning, consistent with the R40 zoning that has been in place for many years. And I believe many of my neighbors purchased their property with the understanding that the adjacent vacant lot was zoned residential, and that was what development would be limited to. It would be unfair under those circumstances, particularly now that that area has developed and grown to the extent it has with the prevailing uses and zoning that are in place, to now change that and place a very heavy burden on that land that is negative for the adjacent landowners. Therefore, I would ask the council not to forbid any development of this property, but any development that is consistent with the existing zoning is fine. But I would object to the rezoning and ask that the zoning that's in place remain. I'd like to make 2 points of clarification. First of all, I believe the attorney for the developer indicated that adjacent owners had reached an agreement about buffering. I may have misunderstood that comment, but I have had no direct discussions with the developer and have reached no agreement with the developer regarding buffers, and I am an adjacent property owner. I'd also like to speak to the comments made about the opportunity for the community to have discussions with the developer or obtain information. I know that at least one meeting I attended over a year ago, the developer was present. They had their engineer, their attorney, other individuals, professionals that were working on this project present. But when the hard questions began to be asked, the developer stepped in and had the owner come forward and talk about why he was so excited about this project and shut down the discussion. And normally I would say that is not, I would concede that's probably not relevant, but based on the extent of discussion about the opportunity for the community to get a better understanding of this project, I think it bears clarification. And again, I would ask that the town deny the rezoning request and any development on this property be consistent with the existing zoning that's been in place for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mike Robbins, and I'm the property manager for the Arboretum at Weston, located at 2025 Renaissance Park Place. I work with a company called Stoltz Management Company, and our company not only manages the property, but is also the owner of the Arboretum. On behalf of the company, I'm here this evening to express our support for the proposed zoning change and also for the project that's being discussed. This type of project is invaluable and provides a tremendous benefit for the 8 restaurants and supporting shops and services that we have at the Arboretum. We've learned that this type of project, in addition to benefiting the restaurants, what helps so much is the fact that you'll be able to walk there. The guests would not have to get in their car to drive. And a great night like tonight, that would be tremendous and give them a good feeling about Cary. We've also learned that when travelers are trying to select a place to stay, one of the main factors that can influence their decision is the variety and quality of restaurants that they have. We'd like to think that the Arboretum does that, and as much as anything that we would hope that when they return to the area, they would come back and stay at these hotels, which would benefit Cary and would also hopefully eliminate them from looking of possibly staying at another accommodation not in the Cary area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name's John Rodriguez. I am a resident in Cary. Been here about 6 years. Just been amazed by the growth of Cary in itself and what it's developing into. I think one of the big things that I see as a resident who has big family, the lack of locations for access for hotels in this area. Unless you're going to spend a lot of money to enjoy a wonderful facility, which is across the street from where they're proposing this hotel, I think we're limited in our use and selection. I'm in the hospitality industry. I am very, very familiar with the Daily 7. They are a quality company that not only brings and builds to the standards of what Mr. Smith was talking about, and keeping those standards high, but they're also a great partner in where they build. And I think that when you grow a place like Cary so fast and so furiously as this town is getting, the city is getting, you have to keep that in consideration. What this property will probably look like in 5 years is probably better than when it will be built. It'll have that opportunity, and this company will keep and maintain the integrity of what their standards and what the quality is. I am in full support of this. I think it matches the quality of the Arboretum. It's a great flow, and there's not just a traffic problem situation that may develop from here. There's a traffic problem throughout Cary that has to be addressed. So I think that you're talking about a situation that will be resolved. I'm sure that the members of this panel, of this council, are in the process of this. I think that we need more quality companies in Cary. I think that this project does that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jason Barron, Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 530, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27606. I'm appearing tonight on behalf of Reedy Creek Investments. Reedy Creek Investments owns parcels, actually two parcels immediately adjacent to the site, and I'll highlight those for you momentarily. There's the parcel here, which is not connected to the Arboretum, but essentially stands between the subject parcel. You can see there's a property line kind of in through here. And so this parcel is actually owned by Reedy Creek Investments, and then kind of this whited out area here, and then up along the southern side of the property. Those are both properties that are owned by Reedy Creek Investments. So obviously anything that happens on this site is a concern to Reedy Creek. Really here just to elevate two issues. Obviously this is a preliminary development plan, so there's a lot of detail associated, so we get a lot of detail that we otherwise might not get as part of the traditional conditional use zoning. The first comment that we would like to make relates to the access, and that is, as you all can see on the northeastern side of the property, there is a proposed vehicular connection through the site. Reedy Creek has concerns about how vehicular traffic from this site will flow through that site and negatively impact any potential development or redevelopment of that site. They would also ask the applicant to take a close look on the title side and whether there is an actual easement in favor of this property to make that vehicular connection, because if there's not, it could impact how traffic will flow in and out of this site for a hotel use. The second point, and as you all are aware, the Cary Community Plan is a policy document, and so there are a variety of policies, some of which support applications and some of which do not. I know that very well. And so Reedy Creek Investments is concerned or would like to have the staff look closely about the manner in which a standalone, what we would consider an isolated single use, is consistent with the shape policies of the commercial mixed use center recommendations. Those call for vertically integrated mixed use, pedestrian oriented, where buildings front along the street. not necessarily disputing whether a hotel is an appropriate use in a location such as this, but given the recommendations of the SHAPE portion of the Cary Community Plan for commercial mixed-use centers, we would just like for the staff to look closely and determine whether a single use, which is fairly isolated from the remainder of the area, is in fact consistent with those policies. We will be following this application obviously closely as it goes through the process, and we appreciate you all's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. My name is Amin Davis. I live 203 Montebello Drive, right around the corner from the proposed development. I'm a member of the Black Creek Watershed Association since its inception in 2006, and I'm also a part of a subcommittee of the Beech Tree HOA that's been assembled to look at water issues within the community. So my primary purpose in speaking with you tonight is just to describe the collaborative partnership that we've had between the Black Creek Watershed Association and its partners and the Daily 7 development team. My colleague is going to speak after me about a little bit about the Black Creek Watershed Association, but I just wanted to essentially the primary focus of it is to address stormwater and water quality impacts to the water resources within the watershed. Both Beech Tree and Wessex and this proposed hotel are within the watershed, so that's why it's relevant. A primary concern of the association and the HOA was the stream that drains into the greenway that runs parallel to and south of Montebello Drive had experienced accelerated erosion a couple of years ago, and essentially the stream was within a foot of the greenway that runs along the Montebello Drive greenway. So, and the stream actually originates at behind the Arboretum where that stormwater control basin is. So we, the association, our association has had to pay $20,000 for the stream bank stabilization that was just completed last month, and it actually looks great. The engineer did a great job. So we reached out to the Delhi 7 group last February, or actually prior to February. We had a meeting with them to see, number one, to express our concerns about stormwater management, and number two, if they would be willing to consider us helping them with grant funding to cost share implementing stormwater control measures that would reduce the downstream impacts, the downstream stormwater impacts. So our team essentially was NC State Stormwater Engineering Group, the developers of the Whole Foods Market in North Raleigh, where they did an innovative low-impact development project there. And the outcome of that was essentially the post-construction stormwater leaving the site was almost equal to the stormwater leaving the site prior to development. So it's been lifted up as an ideal model for low-impact development. Long story short, Daily 7 agreed. We had a meeting, a productive meeting. They agreed to allow us to apply for grant funding. We received the award, the EPA Section 319 grant award for over $200,000 to help cost share the innovative stormwater that we had requested. So I'd just like to acknowledge the Daily 7 group for, number one, being willing to come and sit at the table, because it's rare that a developer would be willing to sit down and be open to the discussions we had. Secondly, the collaborative and open dialogue we had was good and allowed us to move forward. And lastly, the perseverance that the Daily 7 group has displayed over the last 2 years with all the different challenges and setbacks that they've had to deal with. So last thing I'd like to say is that if this project does move forward, I think it can be an ideal example of what a public-private partnership is, where there are truly mutually beneficial outcomes to a project. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Mayor and Council. It's good to see you again. I am Christy Perrin. I live at 533 East Edenton Street in Raleigh, and I work for the Water Resources Research Institute at NC State, so I'm speaking on that behalf. As many of you know, I've been working with an informal but coordinated group, the Black Creek Watershed Association, for a number of years. And the purpose of this group is to work with citizens and landowners to try and educate them and involve them in the restoration of Black Creek. Black Creek is impaired because of excessive stormwater runoff, which is typical urban stream system, so it's typical to the streams we have in Cary. We're able to get funding for this stream because of its impaired status. And over the years, we've undergone a lot of projects to do stormwater retrofits on existing development as our main strategy for improving Black Creek. So we've been doing that for a number of years. We actually have a project at Kingswood Elementary right now where we're finishing up rain gardens and rainwater harvesting and educational efforts with the students. We went ahead and did some monitoring in the stream last year to see how our strategy was working, and unfortunately we found that the benthic macroinvertebrates, which is how the state tests streams to see how they're doing, they have not improved. They've actually gotten a little bit worse. So it's led us to think, well, maybe our strategy of retrofitting existing development that was developed before any stormwater regulations were around needs to be supplemented with additional strategies addressing new development. Maybe our existing stormwater regulations are not quite robust enough to protect our waterways to the way that we want them. So we were, I have to give kudos to Amin Davis, who just spoke. He's the one who has spearheaded the negotiations and the collaboration. And through that collaboration, we're able to get this EPA grant, which states that should the rezoning pass and we work on this project together, we will work with the developer to install innovative stormwater measures to go above and beyond what's required. We cannot use the EPA grant to do what is already required. So above and beyond what is required, aiming for infiltration on site, trying to protect the integrity of the stream downstream. And as a university employee, I can't say you should vote for it or not, but I just want to let you know, if you do, we will work with them moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perrin. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Michael Norden, and I am a resident of the Wessex neighborhood, and I'm afraid I cannot support this project as it's currently proposed. I have to commend the developer and express a great deal of empathy for some of the businesses that have come before you this evening talking about how this would be a beneficial project for their businesses. I too am concerned about the Arboretum and the empty property in the Arboretum. I would like to see those properties inhabited again. I would like to see businesses in there thriving. So I have a great deal of empathy for that particular property. And while we might appreciate the steps forward that the developer has made in terms of addressing certain issues, in particular relative to stormwater, you can't deny that the infrastructure surrounding this area for this property, for this density, cannot support the project as it is proposed. Simply moving the turnaround from Research Drive to Montebello doesn't fix the problem. I use Research Drive every single day, both in and out, and I can tell you that if you have a U-turn at that location, you will increase safety problems and increase accidents significantly. And there's just unfortunately no way around that from a traffic perspective. The other thing that I would take issue with relative to the developer's claims at the beginning, there were more issues than just 4 from the property owners. In Wessex, we currently suffer a challenge and a problem with water pressure. It's not just my own home, it's my neighbors, and it's a problem that we already need to address. So if we introduce a use of this particular property with this kind of density, unfortunately, that's not going to fix that problem. It's going to exacerbate it and make it much, much worse. So with due respect to each of the representatives that have spoken to you before, unfortunately, the issue with this land is simply one of density. The challenges of that density are, in my opinion, not fixable for this particular use of property, and my recommendation would be to not approve this project as it's proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Mike Earhart. I'm the head of school at Cary Academy. I'd like to start by thanking Daily 7 for the time they took to speak with us early in the conception of this project, and echo what they said about a concern that we did raise at that particular point about a turnaround at Research Drive and what that would mean for school commuters and increasing traffic in that area. What I'd also like to bring up is the pedestrian traffic that goes from Cary Academy to the Arboretum, to the adjoining properties. There are a large number of students, especially in the afternoons, that walk over there when there's an activity on campus later in the day, and they come back at night. And as much as I love our kids and would love to tell you that they're very attentive, you get them in a group, and they're not always paying the best attention. And when you add a number of drivers who are looking at their GPSs or traveling unpredictably, where they're doing U-turns or turning around in areas that are not normal areas, our students are going to do even a worse job of predicting what a car might do in a situation like that. And I would like the council to take a look at some of those other safety concerns that haven't been raised in the meeting yet today. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Courtney Daly Boone, and I'm here to speak in favor of the development of the proposed hotel site on Harrison Avenue. I am in a unique position where I am part of the Daly family and part owner in Daly 7. I am also a resident of the Wessex community, which is the neighborhood directly next door to the proposed site. I live at 104 Williston Drive. I'll start with a few things about Daly 7. There are not many companies like it. Many hotel companies are either small or are very large. We fall in the middle. We are not one of the large companies that owns hundreds of hotels and quickly buys and sells dozens at a time. We also are not one of the small hoteliers that owns 1 or 2 hotels where a shift in the economy could be devastating. We find ourselves perfectly in the middle, big enough to be strong and small enough to really care about our properties. Daly 7 is also a development and a management company. Many companies are either one or the other. They either develop or they manage. Since we do both, we ensure that the development is done right, because if it isn't, we're the ones that deal with it down the road. And when it comes to operating hotels, we are among the best. It's easy to just say that, so here I'm going to go into some detail. We are IHG Torchbearer Award winners, which is the chain's highest honor for quality and service. We are Marriott Silver Hotel Award winners, which is given when you maintain near-perfect guest satisfaction scores throughout the year. We are Hilton Lighthouse Award winners, which is given to hotels that maintain standings within the top 5% of their brand worldwide. We are IHG 505 winners, which recognizes the elite group that achieves the green guest experience. We are winners of the Certificate of Excellence from TripAdvisor, which is given to establishments that consistently achieve great traveler reviews. We are winners of the Best Western Chairman's Award, which is the chain's highest award for quality. And we are Marriott Horizon Award winners, which is given to companies that embody Marriott's spirit of outstanding customer service and an engaged workforce. And all of these awards we won last year. We win multiple awards every year. I don't mention this to boast, although we are proud, because these awards are a reflection of the hardworking individuals that work with us. I say this so you can be confident that these hotels will be something that the community can be proud of. I would also like to speak to the community aspect of our company and our family. We live here and we raise our families here. We are not a company that works and lives far away with no real interest in this area. I am pressed for time, so I'm just going to mention a few specifically. But we support many charities, including local charities such as Passage Home, which my Uncle Bob here serves on the board of directors. Passage Home is a Raleigh nonprofit that works to prevent homelessness. My Aunt Shalane serves on the Women's Leadership Council at UNC to promote women in leadership roles. We also help all of our employees bring the holidays to their home every year. We have bought everything from bikes to books to toys to gadgets. From Make-A-Wish to the American Cancer Society to Meals on Wheels, from the March of Dimes to the Boys and Girls Clubs to college scholarships. We put our time, expertise, and money into the hands of those who need it. The first hotel we built in this area was built in Raleigh by my dad in 1982. Now we own and operate 11 hotels just in this area, and we feel blessed to know the people that choose to work in them. My point is, we work here and we live here. We truly care about this community. I live in Wessex with my husband and my kids. I call the people on either side of us my neighbors and my friends. I would not be here to speak in favor of this development if I did not truly believe that we were right for the job. I know that some may not be in favor of development, even with our collaborative efforts, and I understand and respect that choice. But for those who are for development, there is a need for lodging in this area, and I hope you entrust us to do the work. My family has been in the hotel business since 1972. That's almost 50 years. We have been building hotels for decades. We have successfully owned and operated them for decades, and we are the right ones for the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boone. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Mike Markowitz, and I live in Wessex. I've been there for about 18 years now, and for work, I'm a physician. I teach at the university, and my specialty is in public health and the environment, which is one big concern that I have about this development. I am absolutely convinced from what I've heard tonight that this is a reputable company. They're good. We've heard a lot of supporters from their family. We've heard a lot of supporters that work with them. But that's not the question. It's, is this the right thing to do right across the street from all these kids who are at Cary Academy, right next to all of these citizens that are living in the proximity where there's going to be this construction? And this construction, one, it's of massive proportions. It's going to cause issues with several different things. Traffic, we've talked about. I used to have about a 10-second wait to get into my neighborhood. I told you, 18 years I've been there. Now it's already 10 minutes. I'm waiting just to turn into my neighborhood, and we're going to add all of these extra buildings. I think traffic will be an issue. The second thing is, for my specialty, I do have a concern about the environment. One is the pollution with all the construction that this is going to cause. Construction workers have the highest rate of cancer of any type of employee. And we're going to be exposed not to the degree that the construction workers are, but all these kids at the Cary Academy, all the kids living in these neighborhoods, all the people are going to be exposed in very close proximity to this construction for a long period of time, not to mention the beauty of the land and the environmental hazard that it's going to cause, potentially, but at least the de-beautification of the beautiful Cary that I moved to. When I actually first came here, I wasn't going to live here, I was going to live in Chapel Hill. And I went walking one day by Black Creek Trail, and I saw those trees. And I didn't even know it was near Wessex. And then I saw Wessex, I said, nah, I don't think I want to move here. I'm concerned about, I want to live in Chapel Hill. And then I saw the fact that this neighborhood was directly adjacent to this beautiful park. And I think it is important to preserve what we have in Cary, the beauty of the trees. I don't really think we need another hotel. We have 3 within walking distance, and then we have probably between 25 and 50 within a 2-mile drive. I know, I travel all the time for work. I host people. There's tons of hotels for them to stay at. I'm curious what the occupancy rates are at these hotels, and if they're really that oversold. So in conclusion, is I have great concerns about what this will do to the environment, the potential health and environmental risks it will place on the kids and the natives that are nearby. And then you look at those potential risks and you balance that against the benefits of having another couple of hotels. Do we really, really need hotels, a couple extra hotels nearby? And is there that dearth of housing for business travelers? And is it worth these risks and all of the extra traffic that we're going to have? Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Joe Daly, a member of the Daly family, a Cary resident in the Waycroft neighborhood, and the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Daly 7 Hotels. I recognize there are people here who oppose our Marriott Hotel project, and I respect that. But I am here tonight to show my support of this project. A Marriott Hotel provides a fundamental asset to any city by offering guest rooms to not only our out-of-town guests, but our residents of the Cary neighborhood. We will accommodate guests visiting and working with our local hospitals, schools, government officials, charities, business offices, and vendors. Our hotels will also house guests for our weddings, family reunions, festivals, concerts, sporting events, and church services. Marriott hotels are safe and secure areas that residents can use in a time of disasters and power outages. They will also provide much needed capital and occupancy taxes for the city of Cary to stimulate funds for growth and quality of life. A hotel is a great neighbor to have because what is good for the hotel business is good for the neighborhood. Private, quiet, clean, well taken care of, up to date, friendly, and safe. We pride ourselves in being a home away from home for our guests. As my Uncle Bob said, we are long-term holders of our assets who invest dollars back into our product to maintain quality and appearance. With this site having a need for a lodging project, I am confident to say Daly 7 is the company for the job. Thank you for this opportunity to share my supporting thoughts, and we appreciate the consideration of our rezoning application.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Travis Flewitt with Kimley Horn and Associates, 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 600 in Raleigh. Here on behalf of the applicant, I am a professional transportation engineer and assisted them with reviewing the site access and the TAR. I just wanted to make a couple notes regards to comments that were made earlier. One is that the site access points were coordinated with, reviewed, and approved through both Town of Cary staff and NCDOT, deemed to be acceptable for this type of project. And then also in regards to the traffic generated by this use, hotels are relatively low generators compared to some other uses that could be put on this site that obviously would still need rezonings as well, like commercial uses. But particularly given the proximity to the Arboretum, the traffic analysis report did not account for any internal capture with the Arboretum, but users of these hotels obviously looking for services adjacent to them within walking distance or even driving distance, but without having to get out onto Harrison Avenue or Weston Parkway. Another thing the traffic analysis didn't really account for is the businesses along Weston Parkway, people that use hotels for those businesses traveling to other hotels in the area, really double counting of trips that be coming to these hotels instead of going elsewhere. So there was no reduction for that, which is appropriate for the traffic study, but there is some double counting of traffic and overstating of the impacts as well for this type of development.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good evening, members of the council. My name is Chuck Anderson. I am a lifelong resident of Wake County, and I have lived in Cary since 1984.
I join with Mr. Williams in his observation about the growth in Cary. I love living in Cary, and the growth in Cary has been a blessing to my family and me. It has blessed us socially and professionally and educationally. I might mention that my wife teaches at Cary High School, and my 3 children are all graduates of Cary High School. We are embedded in Cary. And I find that the well-planned development of our community is what makes it such a vibrant and wonderful place to live. I find this particular development to be consistent with what is going on at a very important intersection with I-40. The provision of hospitality services in that area where there are many businesses and then into that Weston Business Park, this will be an important amenity to what's already there. I live over by Walnut Street and the 1 and 64 interchange. We have a number of hotel properties over at Crossroads and now right there at the interchange with the Beltline. And that has been a benefit to the business community over there, and it has not overburdened the residents. It hasn't overburdened me in any event. I have found that to be part of a vibrant business community right there in our little corner of the world. And I think you will find that this will have a similar effect here at this very important intersection at North Harrison. I do want to mention something about the Daly Company. I am familiar with their properties. I have seen them. I have visited them in Morrisville and Raleigh and in Greensboro and in Durham. They are top-notch, first-class projects. The town will be proud to have this project and this development here at this very important intersection. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Jane Wright. I wasn't planning on speaking today, but I have been a resident on Rock Point Lane since 1988, and since Wessex has been built, they now cut through on Rock Point Lane, so I understand the impact of traffic. And I would just like to challenge every one of you on the town council and everyone on the Planning and Zoning Commission to try to take a left out from Montebello onto North Harrison, and just try to take a left during the rush hour traffic. We do have a turn lane now, so we can turn in there, but if you put that turn, the U-turn thing that you're talking about, I don't think that's going to be possible. So I would like to challenge you during the rush hour time in the morning and the evening to try to turn left to go north on Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry for my lateness. I wasn't expecting to talk tonight either. My name is Joanne Mayo, and I'm a resident of Beechtree, and I live in one of the properties very close to where the hotel is being proposed. And I live on a street called Pine Hill, which connects North Harrison Trace, our development, and Wessex. And in the morning, I have all this traffic from Wessex that's trying to get to North Harrison. And so they cut through my street. So I have to, in order to get on my driveway, I have to wait for these cars to go by. That's today's traffic. If you put this much traffic in that area, people are going to be using the cut through of Pine Hill between Wessex and Beechtree. And so I'll never get out of my driveway. in the morning. But, and then also, you know, there's a concern with putting a U-turn right at Montebello because we won't be able to turn left, and where's the U-turn if we turn right? And then the other concern I have is that the light that the hotel with 7 stories will be over there. My bedroom windows will be facing this. So my concern is that the light from the hotel and from the parking lot will be such where it will be light during the night, so when I'm sleeping. So I don't know if 7 stories is, you know, is short enough. So, I mean, I do like the idea of having a hotel here versus a shopping center, because I think there will be a lot less traffic there, but I am concerned with the current proposal. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Gary McCabe. I'm the owner of Redline Engineering. I'm actually the civil engineer that drew that. I wanted to, first off, start out with addressing a couple items that I've heard, just to kind of follow up so everyone's on the same page. But, you know, the great thing about living in North Carolina, I've been here my whole life, is that when we move into an area, everybody wants to live in North Carolina. It's the best place in the world. We know that. We've seen the Forbes magazines, articles. We're all pumped up, ready for the growth. But we always want to shut the door behind us. And it seems like no matter what we do, we never have enough forethought, because there was never an idea in Cary that Cary would be this large. From what Mr. Joel said, he never imagined Cary would be what it is today, but it's beautiful. And a lot of people have opposed the growth in Cary, and a lot of people have been for it. This project is no different than any other project. And the other paradigm of North Carolina is that those of us who have lived here our whole lives don't want it to change one bit. We want it to have the same way it was when I was a little boy. I had the Mayberry experience at the coast. I grew up at the coast. I go back to my hometown, I don't hardly recognize it. Is that a bad thing? Probably not. There's a lot of people that get to enjoy the coast now that couldn't afford to do so back then. So my little personal monologue's over now, and I'll get back down to brass tacks. I do want to address one comment about zoning. The property is zoned R40, but it's also, the town staff had the forethought to say, we need to control density. We need to create these centers where we can pocket density, and that's where we are. We're in a regional activity center that was created for SAS in that area, and we're squarely inside of that. It was R40 because it's a holding zone, because you don't zone it something so that they have to rezone it again. It was R40. It's a benign holder. It's a placeholder. So the exception or the expectation of staff has always been, it will be something one day, but we're going to contain our density. We're in that. We are dense. We are 30% less dense. Now, I want you to think about how many rooms that is a night, and I want to think of how much money that is. That's a lot. It is a lot. And I don't know, I have another client that would give up 30% of their yield for any project. I've enjoyed working with this project for 2 years. I've enjoyed working with the neighbors. You know, once we got past the yelling and screaming, we made some headway. I think you can see that here. I think we can see that clearly. I will mention traffic on North Harrison. I know this is going to surprise you. It's terrible. It's terrible. But this project cannot fix everything on North Harrison. Nothing that we could do would fix North Harrison. We do realize that there is a plan of action. Town staff has been wonderful. I have to applaud your town staff. They have been fantastic through this whole process. Ms. Grannon and Mr. Hales have been, and Pri of them, everyone has been just fantastic to work with. They've helped us find solutions rather than just slamming a door. Your neighboring cities don't necessarily operate that way, and I hope you realize how much of a treasure it is to have the staff that you do. I always enjoy working in Cary. I will point out, access has been discussed. The access to the north that was pointed out is a cross access. That was part of a site plan for the Arboretum. They were required to stub it to the property line. They were required to plat an easement. The easement is platted. To the south, we actually met with DOT and town staff about putting a signalized intersection in front of the adjacent property to the south. And we pursued that, and we were not successful. We actually offered to pay for it and put a signalized intersection there, and DOT broke their own rule of the distance between traffic signals, because they said you can't have one between Weston and Research. There's not enough distance. But we found that that spot was the exact center point, and they were willing to consider it if we can get the property owner to agree. We were not successful in our efforts. So you have what you have in front of you, not for a lack of effort, not for a lack of trying. 2 years is a long time. Most of my projects that I started at the same time are already constructed and occupied. So thank you for your time, your consideration. Thank you to the staff for bearing with us for 2 years, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Any others to speak? I'm going to close this public hearing, and I'll bring Ms. Grannon back up. There's several things said. Last speaker actually hit a few points that I wanted to make. The first thing I want you to confirm is how long this has not been planned as residential.
How long has this not?
It's been a region activity center.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's been something
Yeah,
other
no,
than
it's-
residential for decades.
As long as I've been with the town. That's
Right. So,
Over 2 decades.
as the last speaker said, is zone R40. And what that
R40.
means is when you come into the town, you have to have a zoning, and we give you an R40 zoning. That means 1 acre lot residential, which doesn't happen
Right.
anymore around here. So that is a holding zoning, and that is why it's R40 zoning. Last speaker was saying exactly that, and that's what I wanted to make. There was a speaker earlier that was talking about that they wanted the development to occur as R40, which probably would not be approved by this council, this underutilization of the property. But
Yeah, as a clarification, the zoning is R40, but the land use plan prior to the Cary Community Plan designated this for a regional activity center. So the long-range comprehensive plan looked for non-residential use on this site, and then the Cary Community Plan further supports that.
Right. Then let's see, the other comment I heard was forbid development at this property. Do not have that authorization to forbid development anywhere, nor should we. Just want to make sure that was very clear. Water pressure. It's the first I've heard about water pressure over there. Staff could probably help me.
I could
With the water-
speak to that.
okay.
I received one inquiry from a citizen who spoke earlier tonight about water pressure, so I referred that to our transportation and facility staff. They had not received any complaints about water pressure, but I did communicate with that earlier speaker. Now, I heard a second speaker tonight, and we'll be happy to follow up with that citizen as well.
Perfect. Another comment, don't need a hotel. It's very important to understand that we can't prescribe what type of development will go in there. There have been times in my life where I complained about drugstores going on every corner, but I have no control over that.
Now you need them.
But I go to the drugstores.
It's because everybody's on drugs.
But we really, seriously cannot control what type of development goes there. So even if there is a type of development, they could put one right next to it. Turn lanes and access, I'm curious and I want to see more, maybe privately if you can, about how this all works. If there's a traffic model, I would love to see that. Especially during peak hours, how that would all come into play, because I drive that every day, as I'm sure some of my colleagues do. When you work at SAS, you drive Research Drive every day, and you see all that traffic, and I want to know how that's all going to play out. And then there's one final comment I noted about the light from the hotel. That's a site plan issue. However, We have restrictions on how the light is directed in developments to make sure they don't bleed over
Absolutely.
into other properties. They got to go down.
Correct.
And so you won't have this
Spillover,
light.
correct.
Right, exactly. Those are the things I noted. I'm sure my colleagues have other things. I'll look this way first.
And I would like to just make
Oh,
a
sure.
couple of points for the record, too, that I feel are important. I know you're aware of this. We heard a lot about the end user, about the company, the developer, and the proposed branding. For the record, even though I realize you all know this, those are not conditions of zoning. We can't take into consideration
Right.
how wonderful the Daly family is. Even though we've had good experiences with dealing with them, they could sell the property someday, even if they don't wish to at this point. But
Thank you for bringing that up. I've said that so many times in the past, and I didn't bring that up, that we cannot consider the applicant.
Correct.
Exactly right.
I'd like to also point out that the 80-foot buffer is an LDO standard. At first, when the applicant first came in for DRC meetings, they were thinking this might fall under the office category, which would only require a 40-foot buffer, but we let the engineer know, no, we're going to expect to see that 80-foot buffer. The applicant did not request any reductions to that 80-foot buffer other than that small area where the adjacent property owner's fence encroaches. So just as a point of clarification, they are offering a setback, which is a 100-foot setback from that property line, which exceeds typical standards. But the 80-foot buffer is something that we were expecting to see. So.
Okay. Comments from this end?
Well, just a general comment, I guess, to get started. Looks like there have been a lot of meetings going on for 2 years. It's a long period of time. And someone tonight said that was time well spent, and I echo that. I think a lot of progress has been made, especially that stormwater grant. Mr. Davis and Ms. Perrin and others who worked on that. It's a wonderful thing. I think tonight's public hearing is also time well spent. We heard just about every detail we would possibly want to hear. And I have to mention, as an aside, with the number of speakers that we had tonight, might be a record. No one went over their time. Did you catch that?
Only one yellow light, eh?
One yellow, you didn't have to stop anybody. So we really thank everybody coming out tonight to do that. My major concern coming into tonight was echoed by several people, and that's the traffic flow. Making that left or the U-turns, the cut-throughs, and really what you said, Mayor, help you understand how a model, how that can work. I'd like to be part of that too, because, I mean, there's a lot of little concerns I think that can still be handled, but that's one I'm not sure about, and I really want to learn more about that myself as this moves through the process. The applicant's representative said they're willing to meet again with the neighbors, and it looks maybe like that could happen and should happen, so I encourage them to do that as this moves through. So it's just a general comment.
Okay.
I'm not to repeat any, I'm also concerned about the traffic mitigation. I'm also interested in what, I know there's a lot of progress that's been made on stormwater, and I'm not saying anything negative, but one of the interesting things that we've seen is that applicants can also go above and beyond, right? So there is a stormwater facility, which by LDO standards is a 10-year, is that right? It would be interesting if the applicant were to offer a 25-year, or as we've now seen in recent negotiations, even 100-year stormwater event support. That's something I think that would, this council would certainly relish the opportunity to do something beyond what is required. Also, I don't see on this plan the connectivity as mentioned to the Arboretum, the safe connectivity. Is the it kind of looks like there's a half a sidewalk, or is it just the picture?
This is their property. They're showing the sidewalk on their property. That's the property line.
So I'm concerned that we had this in Preston as well, where we had a sidewalk that led to nowhere, right? It would be great if there could be a private agreement or something there, because people will walk there. They will walk there. They're going to want coffee. They're going to want to visit these 8 restaurants and the Arboretum. It would be great if there was a plan, some sort of agreement between the property owners to make it safe for people to get from the hotels
to the Arboretum. We know they're gonna come. You said what a great facility is. They're not gonna drive to the Arboretum unless it's raining. It's right next door. And I also agree, I thought it was very interesting that the civil engineer said, traffic is horrible on Harrison. We know that, traffic is horrible. This isn't going to make it better. So without there being something here, there were 7 recommendations, traffic mitigation, and the applicants offer basically 1.5 of the 7 that were recommended. I'd like to know what else could be done.
Ms. France, anything?
Well, yes, and this has been going on a long time. I remember meeting with citizens both here and at their home to actually walk the property immediately to the west of this to get a lay of the land. The one thing that wasn't mentioned tonight was topography. The Wessex neighborhood is actually very farther down than this site, so this site's way up on the hill. So the reality is, whether it's a 2-story, 4-story, 7-story, you're still looking up at it, and it's going to be tall, no matter what gets built there. I applaud the applicant's team, and the neighbors, the community and beyond, for all working together to make this a better project. It seems like every time we have a project that takes a couple years, starts out and then gets a lot better towards the end. And I think this is just like Fenton and other projects. It's gotten a lot better as time has gone on. Yeah, traffic's terrible. I'll echo the comments. And no matter what would be built here would make traffic worse. You know, I mean, this isn't a regional mixed-use activity center or destination center, whatever we call it today. You know, the land is going to develop. Whether it develops as this or all the other parcels around it are developed more comprehensively, it's going to develop. So no matter what gets built here is going to add to that problem. I share the questions and desire to know more about, you know, what can we do to fix that? Why are some traffic mitigations offered and some aren't? I'd like to better understand that. I would really love to better understand the comment I heard about the traffic light, that they somehow found a way to make it work with DOT and the applicant was willing to pay for it, but yet it's not going to happen. If you want to let me know about that offline, please feel free, but that was...
I think we all want to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us all know. That was fascinating for me to hear that. Yes, R40's a holding zone. I'm not going to repeat that. You know, density I get, but again, it's, you know, regional activity. This could develop mixed-use retail, office, residential above it and be way more dense and produce way more traffic than a hotel. The efforts that really stood out to me, honestly, I don't know that we've ever seen it, was their efforts to pursue with the Black Creek Watershed Association and to go after that EPA grant. I mean, that was really impressive and spoke to me about their efforts to be good, not only good neighbors, but as good as they can be for the environment and the stream and try to help an existing problem. I mean, I really appreciated that. So, make sure I'm not missing anything that I wrote down. Again, started out as 350 rooms. We're down to 252 minus a hotel, 1 story, and they're saving the champion trees. It has come a long way. The project might not be done cooking yet, but it's definitely improved. I would also consider the applicant and the neighbors to continue to work together and ultimately come up with something that all parties can be satisfied with.
Thank you, Mr. France. Mr. Smith, anything?
Well, you kind of hit them all, but, you know, I think...
Get to Ken, he won't have anything to say.
I think the thing that was the biggest surprise is you have to understand what could be there and what some of the other options were and how this use, you know, in my opinion, will have less impact than some of the other uses that could be there. And on top of that, coming back and making a lot of the other accommodations, traffic notwithstanding, I'm not going to get into traffic, but dealing with the stormwater, it is not unusual if these come back and you would add more hotel units. You would have more. You know, you'd say, well, if we're doing all this to help the community, if we're doing all this to help, you know, we need to have a return. We need to be a little more dense. So to reduce it by the 30% is to me an impressive thing. Now, you know, Laurie, I kind of have that same struggle. You have all these 7 items, and you say, well, we got 1.5, but then I hear the story about the light and a couple of the other things. You know, I just think folks have to think long and hard about what the other options are and recognize as a group here, we're going to keep working on the traffic situations. Now, many of you probably weren't born when the Arboretum was first considered, but when the Arboretum came before us, that was probably one of the most contentious developments to come before us at that time. It was the outrage in the neighboring communities was loud. Some of you here tonight may have been part of that, and you probably have a better memory than I do. But the point is, it was contentious, it was emotional, and then there was a little bit of chicanery where the developer at that time found a magic 1 foot. So instead of being within the 100-foot buffer, it was 101 feet, so was able to avoid making certain things.
The protest petition.
The protest petition, thank you. And so there was all kinds of stuff going on back then that made it difficult. I was actually a little bit surprised not to hear from some of that, like how is it now having the Arboretum next to you? And again, traffic notwithstanding. Because, you know, from my observations, and I've heard a lot where that's been a pretty good neighbor and a pretty reasonable use next to a development at that. So I think this has come a long way. I think I'd love to see a little bit more on what we as a town can do and what the developer can do to maybe put our energies together with a little bit of that traffic. I don't know. I'm anxious to hear about the light and some of those things also. But hang in there and let's just keep working it.
Ms. Robinson?
For the most part, I think it is an appropriate fit for this location, given the fact that we have so much employment nearby and the Arboretum. I do have tremendous concerns about the traffic on Harrison, not so much the volumes, but the resulting difficulty of navigating that road, getting onto Harrison with the volumes. Because it's not like it's standstill traffic. If it was standstill traffic, it'd actually be easier to get out at times. But we're going to have kind of that high-frequency traffic. So I'm very interested in finding out more about this traffic signal, as Mr. France mentioned. I'm concerned about the fact that it's going to be such a high building, what the neighbors are going to see. So I just want to make sure, and I know this is not a zoning issue, but I just want to make sure that the hotel looks as attractive on the backside as it does on the front side, because we often have like the forgotten backside, and I want to make sure that it's attractive so that when people see a hotel peeking up over their trees, that it looks good. So those would be 2 of the main concerns that I would add to everything else that people have said.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. George?
I checked off all but 2.
Oh, really? I thought we hit them all.
The mention that there might be an easement problem from Reedy Creek Investments on that entrance. I'd like to hear more about that and make sure that that's cleared up before we have any kind of vote or consideration, because I don't want to vote and then we find out we can't connect to the Arboretum. So I don't know if anybody can speak to that, if there's a problem, or.
Connectivity is a requirement.
What about
It's an
the
ordinance
easement issue?
requirement, and that's something I'll ask the applicant to clarify for us.
Okay.
And see what the negotiations have been with that.
And then to second a comment, but I do hear what Ms. Bush said. I think that to know that the $200,000 from the EPA has to be spent above and beyond meeting the base standards, then I know we're going to get better than the base. I just hope we don't get a lot of experimental stuff that doesn't do anything. You know, I really want it to be, when it's spent, I want it to be spent, and hopefully they'll do things that'll make it a 25 or a 50 or whatever, rather than some exotic plant that's supposed to swallow all the water and it doesn't live in this area. Yeah, I want to make sure it's properly spent. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. George. Any other additional questions, comments? This is going to go to our Planning and Zoning Board. I'm going to look at Ms. Tobbit. Another public meeting would really help, and she's shaking her head yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, she's going to work on it, and I've known her for years, so she'll do what she says.
Announce the date already?
Date?
Did you confirm the date
12th.
for the meeting? March 12th.
March 12th is,
So, and the applicants will provide them with the mailing list that we used for the public hearing. Just want to point out, too, that we updated that mailing list to make sure it was current, since it had been such a long time since the neighborhood meetings. So we'll make sure that we provide that to the applicant so they can use that same list.
do we have a location? Just curious.
Not yet.
Not yet? To be determined.
To
But
be
you'll be
determined.
notified by mail, and if you haven't heard by mail and you're interested, just contact us, and we'll put you in touch with the right person, has
Thank
the
you.
right information. So this will go to our Planning and Zoning Board and return to us at a future date. How's council doing? We ready for one more public hearing? All right, moving on. Our last public hearing is ACT 04 Land Development Ordinance Amendments. Ms. Schumacher Georgopoulos. Did I say it right? Welcome.
Thank you.
Of Development Services will introduce the item, and council will not take action on this rezoning, but it will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board and returned to council at a future meeting.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As the mayor mentioned, this is the public hearing for Act 4 for Land Development Ordinance Amendments. Act 4 will include 2 items for the public hearing tonight. Item A establishes new uses for breweries, distilleries, and wineries. And item B will include 4 minor amendments. We begin tonight with the amendment to add brewery, distillery, and winery to the Land Development Ordinance. And from here out, I'm going to refer to all 3 as either breweries or businesses, because saying that 3 times fast doesn't work out so well. But I think a question at this point is, why do this now? We know that these industries are important to the state of North Carolina. We've seen the growth of the craft beer industry exceed over 300 breweries across the state. And according to information from 2016, North Carolina was in the top 10 states, not just for the number of breweries, but also for the economic impact and the number of barrels produced per year. In addition to breweries, North Carolina also ranks 10th in both grape and wine production in the United States. And Cary has contributed to these numbers with the opening of 3 breweries in the last 4 years. And due to the success of our local breweries, their desire to expand, and inquiry from potential new breweries, we felt it was time to create this use specific to these businesses. Through a collaborative effort or process of working with our local breweries and our winery, and even future business owners, we bring forward this ordinance amendment. The LDO does not currently recognize these businesses as distinct uses. Cary's 3 existing breweries and winery are currently classified as light manufacturing uses and are limited to a business model and the location of only light manufacturing uses. With this proposed amendment, we provide definitions for these new uses, as well as allow these businesses to also exist in commercial areas. Use-specific standards for allowances of tasting rooms and parking requirements are also included within the amendment. And so ultimately, we look to this proposed amendment to create more opportunities like this in the community, which meet the intent of expanding these uses in our downtown planning area based on the Cary Community Plan, and additionally to allow these businesses to include restaurants and tasting rooms in commercial districts contributes to the intent of nurturing and growing existing small businesses and fostering sustained prosperity to keep Cary great. And with that, we'll move on to our final item tonight, which includes 4 minor amendments. The first item is to update terminology to reflect current administrative names and processes related to historic preservation. The second item is to add the criteria, advance the goals and purpose of the LDO for any buffer reduction requiring council approval. And the third amendment would allow voluntary dedication of right-of-way for an otherwise exempt subdivision without triggering a requirement for improvements such as road widening. And the final amendment clarifies the process of parkland dedication in Chatham County. This concludes staff presentation and will be available to answer any questions following the public hearing.
Thank you. Now's the time for the public hearing for ACT 04 Land Development Ordinance Amendments, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Well, it looks like we emptied the auditorium. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and I'll open it up to council members for questions or comments. Okay, it'll go to the Planning and Zoning Board for their review and will return to us at a future date. Thank you, Ms. Schumacher, Georgopoulos.
Thank you very much.
We now move to discussion items. Our first discussion item is funding for lease space for town-managed recreation programs at Village Square at Amberley. Mr. Kuhn of Transportation Facilities will present the item, and we may take action.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here this evening to talk about another project that our citizens are asking for, and want to just take a few moments to recap what it's about. So in the FY18 budget, Council directed staff to look for temporary space pending development of a more permanent facility in Western Cary. This model is similar to what we have done with lease space with the police department and allows us to serve the public temporarily until a permanent facility can be created. The need was acknowledged in the Imagine Cary Community Plan, and we discussed this at the Western Cary meeting that we had last summer. The lease site is located on a newly developed commercial site surrounded by residential in Amberley. It's near the intersection of McCrimmon Parkway and Yates Door Road, and we've negotiated a 5-year lease with the ability to extend it 2 years. The site is currently under construction, and here's an exterior view of the new commercial area and the space where we will be leasing. And the proposed floor plan is about 1,866 square feet, which is similar in size to the Herb Young Community Center Room B, to give you a scale. And the space will include a restroom, utility sink, some storage, and a welcome desk. Once in operation, there'll be many of the classes as shown on the screen, including visual and performing arts, nature education, fitness and wellness, STEM programs, as well as possible outdoor activities. So in summary, we recommend Council approve $120,900 for upfit of construction of leased program space in Western Cary. Of this amount, $93,300 will ultimately be reimbursed upon completion of construction to Cary by the lessor and recognized as general fund revenue. With that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Very interesting to me. Do we have any other facilities like this in town? Recreational facilities in shopping centers?
No.
So I thought it was really
Fantastic.
interesting because we've got a lot of aging shopping centers. So that's a whole nother story. But one question I would be interested in, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, and I don't even know how to phrase it. It's like a return on investment, building a building. When's that return on investment as opposed to leasing? Do you know what I'm getting at? How long is it advantageous to lease before you reach? It's kind of like buying a home or renting an apartment. When are you? Do you have any idea?
I don't offhand, but knowing that we're going to have a future facility, this was a good stopgap until.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Well, I think the need was designed around trying to meet the citizens' expectations. Because we all know the lead time to do everything we need to do out there and to try to get it established before the permanent facility is ready. So.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wonderful way to meet a need that's desperate in the community out there until we can ultimately get a community center and some parks built. I mean, it's definitely outside the box thinking and a different way of looking to meet our citizens' needs. And I think the Parks Department and facilities folks and everybody's done a wonderful job. And the Parks and Rec Advisory Board was very excited about this as well. So.
Great idea. I'd like to see more, but anyway.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions, or a motion?
Make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Kuhn.
Thank you, Council.
We now move to our last discussion item, amend memorandum of understanding for the Cary Regional Library and downtown Cary parking deck. Mr. Boyd, our downtown manager, and Mr. Kuhn of Transportation Facilities will present this item. Council may take action.
Good evening, Council. Paul will be up in just a minute to talk specifically about the memorandum of understanding, the amendment to that. But really what's exciting here is just sort of the fulfillment and the continuation of the vision of downtown. And this is my current favorite photo. Yes. And it changes a lot, which is exciting, but this is my current favorite one. And it brings a lot of joy because you can see that there are people there, but then you look at it and you know that there was a lot of town staff that went into planning that event and town staff that went into planning that park. And all of it was a fulfillment of a vision that was planted a long time ago from this council. Before I ever came to Cary, I did research about the plans of what was on board, and that's what got exciting to me, to be able to see what those plans were and to see those being fulfilled, and the Arts Center, and really how this is going to be a tremendous asset to what is happening with Wake County, with the library, and with the parking deck as well. And just to give a sense of the orientation of the library, you're very familiar with this. I think it was spectacular the way that they've been able to create the prominence on Dry and its connection with the Arts Center and the park and the parking deck. And if you'll recall, you know, we were looking at this a couple years ago. We thought, boy, it would be great if the development could be timed in such a way that it would be around that deck, and we just didn't have that developer and it lined up at the right time. And so we made some decisions to move into a direction that would make a parking deck not look like a parking deck, but to make it look like a facility and to have art on one side. And really the designs, these are some of the newest renderings of the library, which I think is, well, I think they're great. You know, looking at the way that it's working, this is from the north perspective. You can see as it comes down, this is showing the public restrooms that will be available for folks coming to the park and in the area, and then the town will have lease space on the bottom there as well, and you can see the access and the connection of the library to the deck as well. And I wanted to just talk a little bit, the little blobs on here to indicate this is where we originally thought and looked at the development might be, and as we've started to entertain developers who were interested, they really said, you know, we would really like to be able to develop around here. And we said, we would really like for you to do that. And so, but that caused us to have to think through several things. And that was, is our deck large enough? Do we need it to be larger spaces? Which is why it would make some of the changes to the facades and the original plans of the art. So 600 spaces, and while we're still in the early stages of working through the development component, we wouldn't expect to sell some of those spaces to the private development. So there will be additional funds to be able to make that happen, but we see the private development being able to help with those pieces of that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paul to talk a little more specific of the details of the amendment.
Thanks, thanks, Ted, for that background. And obviously, as you all know, this has been a process and a number of steps we've gone through, including we've signed a memorandum of understanding, or I'll refer to it as an MOU, this evening with Wake County in order to both design and oversee the construction of the parking deck. Wake County has bid the project, and so as part of amending the MOU this evening, we want to award that construction contract. And this will allow also the final design to proceed on the changes of the parking deck as we go from the 350 to the 600 space parking deck. To go to that larger deck, it'll require additional $7 million to do that funding. And so there's a number of steps which I'll go through. But before I hit that summary, I also want to recognize a few of our team members that are in the audience. So we have Mark Forsteri and David Rutherford from Wake County Facilities Design Construction. They've been a great asset in helping us move this project along. There's also Jeff Beam with the Balfour Beatty, the contractor on the project. And then Steve Schuster is also here from Clearscapes Architecture, who is the lead architecture firm for both the library and the parking deck. So all of them been great partners. So this table here, our chart, summarizes the current MOU just very simply. So one of the things that we'll be doing is Cary will provide the library the site via a ground lease, and the details of that ground lease will be in an ILA, and that will be a next step. Cary will fund the parking deck except for approximately 120 parking spaces that will be in the deck, and Wake County is putting $1 million towards those 120 parking spaces. Cary will own and operate the parking deck, and as Ted mentioned, the library also included space in the basement or the lower level for both restrooms for park use and a future shelf space down there that we could develop in the future. Wake would therefore fund, design, operate, and own the library, and Wake is managing the design and construction of the deck on behalf of Cary. So we have the existing MOU. Because we're going to a larger parking deck, we actually need to do a second amendment to the MOU, and this is a bridge document until we can sign the ILA. This will take us a couple months, and we'll be coming back to council with that document, but this will allow the process to move forward. And the second amendment to the MOU will go from the 350 space to 600 space parking deck. It notes the changes to the facade on the north, south, and east side of the parking deck, and the needed coordination with the private development that Ted was showing. The second amendment will also notes the acceptance of the construction bid prices that Wake County had bid for the parking deck, and that Cary would pay $13.9 million towards the parking deck. And so the chart and the staff report in here on the screen show how the additional $7 million is determined. So the next steps for the library and the parking deck is this evening we're before you to execute the second MOU, so that's in February. Begin the design changes immediately for the 600 space parking deck, and that will begin as soon as the MOU. Finalize the ILA based on the details of the final design of that in the spring, and then actual construction will begin in the spring for the library, with the deck falling right behind there in the summer. And construction is 12 to 15 months, so based on the current schedule, it's tentatively shown for completion in the fall 2019, obviously weather dependent and other things. So we have two items for council this evening, and just it's detailed in the staff report and here on the screen, but basically we're asking you to approve the second amendment to the MOU and to appropriate $7 million to expand the parking deck. With that, available for any questions you may have.
Questions or comments?
I'm very happy.
I'm very, very happy. This is what we wanted. I mean, this was a vision from long before '09, probably back to TCAP. I mean, this is everything that we had hoped for. I mean, and then, you know, when it was working with the county, and all of a sudden, now we're getting this regional library and stuff, we didn't have an applicant or a developer to work with us to help complete that vision, and now we do. It is just all so exciting. I want to thank Wake County for your willingness to partner with us and to make this a priority sooner than later. I want to thank our town staff for all your guys' work throughout this. It's been no easy task, but you guys have done one hell of a job. I want to thank the council, especially Ms. Robinson. I know you worked pretty hard with the library folks. I don't want to say back in the day, but it's been a while.
Back in my days.
But, you know, sticking to our vision and continuing to make downtown Cary a priority. It's just such an amazing time to be Cary, and especially downtown. I'm thrilled.
I just want to call out not just our staff, because I think our staff is amazing and did a wonderful job here, but in particular Ted, because we had this vision for what we wanted, and you kept pursuing it, and I'm just so impressed by that. I really, really am impressed, and so thankful for your adherence to that vision. So thank you very much. And echo everything Don said. Thanks, Wake County, for being patient with us.
Yeah, the one thing that I think also needs to be said is people think that once a decision is made, especially in government, that it's set in stone. And I wanted to say this has kind of been set in cement because it was possible, it hadn't hardened yet. And this staff did something really remarkable, which was to pivot, right, while plans were still being, solidified, staying on that whole metaphor. And I think it's really important because any other staff probably would have said, well, council already decided to have the art wall. Well, council decided to do this. And this got us back to our original vision. So everybody was able to really pivot and really quickly. Have to thank staff and Wake County for allowing us and trusting us enough to, the Wake County Commissioners for trusting us enough to allow us to make this change midstream and trusting us enough to do the right thing.
We ready for a motion?
With that, I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
A second.
There's a motion second. Mr. George?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. So reporting on the part and the liaison to the public art, because we had voted to put $1.2 million toward this to put the art wall that's now no longer there. So I know that they'll be working, I want to report that the artists will be working with the private developer also to incorporate art in the whatever goes there, and that possibly it won't be nearly to that extent that so that I guess that may need to come back to us at some point to figure out how much. We've already appropriated it, but it was for an art wall, now it won't be a wall. And then there still will be some, perhaps that same artist will be working with our Phase 2 park developer so that this kind of flows. So I just want to make that comment as we're.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Keir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. We're ready to go in closed session. Ms. Bush.
Pursuant to GS 143-318-11A, I move that we hold a closed session to consult with attorneys employed by and or retained by the town and to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town, among other things. The council expects to receive advice concerning Woodland and on the Green Apartments versus the town of Cary, and to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential by GS 143-318-10E.
Second.
There's a motion and a second discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's unanimous.
I don't know how
We're in
we
closed
go
session.
Closed session.
reconvene our council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye,
Motion
aye.
carries unanimously.
Okay, we're done.
We're done.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.